Louis has asked me to speak on choosing the right medical model. That's my real hobby and my passion to speak about that. It's also a great privilege to speak on the webinar, and I appreciate it very much for being asked to speak. Without a drawing board in front of me, I'll have to make use of your imagination. So if you have a writing instrument in front of you, or a paper or pencil or an iPad, if you can imagine a fish tank, and I'm going to use the analogy of a fish tank as an illustration of the human terrain. Draw a fish tank, you know, the ones people have in their lounges, or even a big one like they have at the aquarium. It's a similar principle. And I'll explain to you what the right model is of approaching health. The first thing is, more than a century ago, there was a massive battle between two different approaches. The one was on health. They were on health. The one was, the author's name was Anthony Béchamp, B-E-C-H-A-M-P, and he was versus Louis Pasteur. Pasteur is very well known. And if you look on Google, go and look at Béchamp versus Pasteur. In that big struggle of ideologies and paradigms, Pasteur won the battle. And he was the proponent of the idea that germs cause disease. And I think even today, we can still feel that we have been made used to that idea of germs causing disease, you know, like bacteria and viruses and so on. But let's get back to our fish tank, and I'll explain the difference between Béchamp and Pasteur. By the way, the reason why Pasteur won was that he had the best backing. He was financed by the pharmaceutical industry. And so he had lots of money, and he had lots of press. And people could hear him better than they could hear Béchamp. Although eventually, towards the end of his life, Pasteur admitted that Béchamp was correct, but by then the paradigm had taken hold, and it was too late to reverse it. But I think with companies like Manatech, it could be the right time now to reverse that approach again. So let's take our fish tank again, and in the fish tank draw a couple of fish, and that fish tank represents our body, which is called the terrain. And the fish are our cells, and they swim in the terrain. And when the fish gets sick, there are three approaches one can take. The one is to treat the disease on the fish. The other one is to treat the fish. And the third approach is to treat the terrain. Now, Béchamp said terrain is everything. If the terrain is good and healthy, the cells will be healthy. If you take into account that the human body is 70% liquid, not water, liquid. And the liquid is a composition of many, many different things. And it comprises temperature and pH and water and nutrients, and also unwanted things like acids. And the cells live in this liquid, in this medium. So the idea was that if the cells get sick, look for the cause in the medium. And this is where Manatech is so important. Manatech realized that if the nutritional status inside the terrain, inside the liquid, is not right, the cells cannot stay healthy. So in the experience of the human race, experiencing disease and sickness from the beginning, All three of these approaches have been practiced. And in the book called Planet Medicine, it explains that there are more than 800 different ways of treating either the terrain, or treating the cells, or treating the disease. Because the disease is just a symptom that something is wrong. So the paradigm we're in now, the model we use now in the modern world, is treatment of symptoms. So if a person has a runny nose, they would ask for something for the runny nose, and the practitioner or the pharmacist will give them an antihistamine. If they have pain, they'll ask for a painkiller. And if they have any other malfunction like blood pressure or thyroid disorders, they'll ask for something to regulate that disorder. That is treating pure symptoms. And that's one model. And that's the predominant model in the world at the moment. And it's not working very well. And the sign that it's not working very well is that all the diseases are getting worse in quantity and in intensity, and affecting younger and younger people. That's the approach we're engaged in at the moment, and that's the way the world works. But there's another approach, and that is one where we treat the cell instead of the symptom. And there are quite a few modalities using this, and that is, for instance, like acupuncture and Ayurvedic and homeopathy and massage and sunlight and so on. What they do is they treat the cell, which is much friendlier. So you can. There's another approach. You can also treat the symptoms with safe therapies. For instance, like aromatherapy, very safe. But the real right model is the one where you correct the medium in which the whole body is swimming, let's call it that, like the fish. And that is the terrain. Baisham called it the terrain. And that terrain only has two requirements. It needs full spectrum nutrition. That means all 200 known nutrients should be available in there. And the disruptive presence of toxins should be removed. So it's a nutrification and detoxification approach. And that's the ultimate model. So when we see that applied in practice, and now with the internet it's easy to see what other practitioners do, they publish their results. There are no more incurable diseases. So if you treat the terrain and correct the terrain, you can solve any health problem. At the moment, that is the backstage type of approach or model in the world, but Manatech is one of the leaders in the field of correcting the terrain. We have the choice now. I think everyone in Manatech is aware that we are engaged in the right model. So let's take an example. If someone says, give me something for my cobbles of the wobbles, as Steve calls these diseases, you say, why don't we rather correct the cause of your cobbles of the wobbles, and that is by restoring the integrity of the terrain. And it's so simple. It put the 200 nutrients in there and take out the disruptive influences like heavy metals and so on. And the germ theory is only valid when the terrain is disturbed. So when that terrain is healthy, the germs can have a right to invade it. If the terrain is healthy, a germ cannot develop there. So the idea that the germ causes the disease is wrong. The terrain is diseased, and then the germ can develop there. So a germ cannot develop in a healthy terrain. It's impossible. And so eventually we're at the place now where the technology in nutrition is so good. If you see Manatech's lab, I was so impressed when I saw it the first time. I couldn't believe it. It's available when you go to Manifest in March. You'll see it, and I was so impressed because I'm a scientist, and I realized we're involved with the best nutrition company in the world, and they're engaged in the right model of correcting the terrain, the fish, the liquid in the fish tank. When that is healthy, the cells cannot get sick. It's just a law. I'm not discounting therapies. Sometimes you have to use a therapy, and some of them are very safe. Like, when we were kids, our moms used to give us some home remedies and castor oil and so on. That's pretty safe remedy to give relief, but it still will not correct the cause. But the other model that's currently in use in the world is to use unsafe therapies to treat symptoms. And I'm going to quote the Surgeon General in America now, and he published this 2 years ago, in 2011. He said that most of the deaths in the world, in the Western world now, is caused by prescription medicine. And of course, prescription medicine is treating our symptoms. I know they give relief quite rapidly, and sometimes it's life-saving therapy. So we can't dismiss it, but for chronic, especially for chronic conditions, to treat symptoms is actually counterproductive. And I'm so glad we're involved with Manatech, where we are applying the right model. And so really we have three models. I'm going to repeat that again. We can treat the symptoms with toxic substances, or we can treat the symptoms with safe substances, or we can correct the cause. And the cause is sitting in the terrain, and there are only two ways to fix that. It's to put the good stuff in there, the 200 nutrients, and that's why I love the 5-core system, because it's got all the missing nutrients in there that the terrain needs to restore its full integrity. And to detoxify itself, you need antioxidants, and of course to stop exposure to these toxins, wherever they're coming from. So I'm very privileged to have spoken tonight, and I'm going to hand back to Vincent now, and thank you very much for being a good audience. Good night.